2009, we implemented our first set of corporate recognition programs. They were homegrown programs that consisted of U.S. Bank rated e-cards, a spot award program with checks, and a Visa reward card program. The tools were available to every line of business, but the programs never really made it easy for employees to recognize one another, especially across lines of business. With our existing program structure, we had multiple programs with decentralized management. There was little connection between those programs or synergy with our corporate values or goals. In addition, there were varied levels of understanding on how and why to effectively recognize individuals and teams, and the adoption of our program varied widely across lines of business. The programs were also challenging to administer, and our reporting, I fondly refer to it as Swiss cheese. To be successful in the redesign of our recognition programs, we knew we had to have the right mix of programs, and we had to improve the awareness of and participation in our programs if we were going to be successful. So we established a set of goals for our program that included: first, it had to be simple and automated. We wanted one integrated platform for all U.S. Bank employees to use. Next, we wanted to engage employees in demonstrating specific behaviors that reinforced our service values. So there needed to be a clear link established between the program and our values. We also needed to improve the clarity and definition of recognition criteria, and it was imperative that recognition was viewed as inclusive. We wanted to ensure that every employee had the opportunity to be recognized and that everyone understood what it took to be recognized. The platform had to have a centralized, automated process to capture, track, and report on recognition activity. And in our culture, and it's probably true in most of yours as well, if you want leaders to pay attention and take action, you measure it and you report on it. Our CEO also truly feels that recognition is the key element to making a company great. He often tells the story of when he started out his career in banking as a part-time teller in a branch, and the senior leader took some time to recognize him for the work he was doing. That interaction left a lasting impression on him, and to this day, he makes an effort to acknowledge and recognize employees in a very personal way. It's his hallmark of being our CEO. Because of this, we knew the program we were creating needed to be much more than just a system. It would have to have the structure and sustainability that would make appreciation part of our DNA. And finally, we wanted this solution to be fun. In a world of spreadsheets, processes, and regulations, we knew that if we were ever going to deviate from what we knew well, that recognition was the time and the place to do something different. So with our goals defined, we set out to define a new recognition program, one that would reward performance, that exemplifies our service values and the behaviors associated with them. The end result was a program called The Best in Us. Today we have more than 65,000 employees across 11 countries participating, and it has both offline and online components. So let me tell you a little bit about how our program is structured. Our online programs consist of both non-monetary and monetary programs that are accessible to all employees for both giving and receiving recognition. The non-monetary program focuses on appreciating everyday efforts, and we also have a Thank a Banker program that allows customers to send e-buttons to employees for great service. Monetarily, we also have a nomination program with 4 different levels that recognize both individuals and teams for great work that really stands out in our company. And any employee can nominate, but all nominations have to be approved by an authorized manager. And the pinnacle of our programs, we have the Circle of Service Excellence and Teamwork at its Best Awards. These programs recognize individuals and teams respectively for work that has made the greatest impact on our company. These award winners are selected by a panel of judges on a quarterly basis from the platinum nominations that are submitted to our Recognize Great Work program. As I mentioned earlier, we really want recognition to be part of our DNA. So in addition to the online system, we've also launched several offline components to help us build our culture. The appreciation kits are geared towards managers and offer more of a traditional way to say thank you with the use of note cards. The buttons are a non-traditional element that adds a bit of fun to the traditional thank you. We have appreciation stations that we've launched, 16 in total across 11 operation centers in our footprint and in Europe. These stations allow employees to hand out notes of appreciation and buttons on the spot, in addition to what they can do online. And finally, we have a recognition booth that we use at internal meetings and events to educate leaders about the program and best practice. No matter how creative you get with communication, one of the best vehicles we have is face-to-face communication, and our recognition booth has really served us well. So the Best in Us program has been in place now for about a year and a half, and since we've launched, we've celebrated a couple of key milestones. We celebrated our 1-year anniversary in February, and at that time, we had created more than 500,000 recognition moments. We were also thrilled to celebrate the sending of our 1 million e-thanks in June. Now, if you had asked anyone who was part of the implementation team for the Best in Us program, we never could have guessed how enthusiastically employees would have embraced the system in such a short period of time, but our employees really love it. The first year, we saw recognition triple over the prior year. That's 52,000 employees receiving at least one thank you, and 22,000 employees receiving monetary recognition. In year 2, we continue to see steady growth around recognition, and we've started to focus not just on quantity, but the quality of recognition we're creating. That focus on quality is also one of the reasons we're seeing slower growth in the area of monetary recognition. The Best in Us, and I will come back to that point in just a minute, but the Best in Us program has really become a point of pride and comparison across our company. Employees want to pass it on. They want their coworkers to feel the same pride that they do, and we're really proud to see employees leading this kind of change in our organization. First, I thought I'd start with the challenges. At the time we were implementing the program, we had 12 lines of business, and we were coming from a place where each line of business had the autonomy to use the corporate recognition tools as they saw fit. They could define their own criteria, assign their own monetary award values, and have anyone they wanted award recognition. So when we started to outline what fair and consistent recognition would look like, there were a lot of opinions across 12 lines of business as to what should or shouldn't the program look like, and what would, and in most cases, what wouldn't work for them. Another challenge we faced was the question of cash versus points. Coming from a cash-based culture, we had a lot of discussion around the pros and cons of cash versus points, and what was the right decision for our employees. And frankly, we have a lot of apprehension about moving away from a cash culture. But there wasn't a right or wrong answer to that question, at least from our point of view. It was just a matter of finding the right balance, communicating the benefits of choice, and frankly, just being open to change. And then, of course, there was the challenge of finding an effective way to communicate the program to 65,000 employees across multiple countries, helping them understand the new program, what was different, why it was different, and how it was going to be better than what they've experienced in the past. So let me talk about some of the success factors that helped us overcome these challenges. We knew that if we were going to be successful in making this transition, we had to have buy-in from every line of business. So in order to do that, we made sure that every single line of business had a seat at the table. And we designed the program with true collaboration across all 12 businesses. It wasn't a perfect fit for everyone, but we were committed to making this a program for all employees. So we kept the dialogue going until we arrived in a place where everyone could feel good about the changes we were making. This ensured that everyone had the opportunity to see firsthand where we were headed and to raise any concerns before we made a change. We didn't want people to have an excuse not to participate, so we made sure that all questions and concerns were addressed prior to launch. And finally, the governance structure we put into place helped ensure that we had the right support and visibility into the project. We had a steering committee of managing committee members who oversaw our progress. We had a group of senior leaders who were well-versed in our culture and who could lend their insights and influence when needed. And then we had a working team that was made up of and led by individuals from each line of business. Collectively, this structure helped us manage change throughout our organization and led to the successful implementation of our new program. So where are we now? We're still building our culture of appreciation, and we know that sustaining the momentum we built is critical to shaping our culture for the future. To that end, we've established a strong communication plan that helps draw attention and focus on the program. These are examples of the campaigns that we've run over the last 9 months to not only educate our employees, but to keep them engaged and having fun with recognition. We've facilitated a Build-A-Button contest to exercise creativity. We've asked employees to take a pledge to pin it forward and recognize one another, not during just Employee Appreciation Month, but every day, by leveraging some of the employee design buttons from our Build-A-Button contest. And finally, we've started to dig deeper into recognition to improve the quality behind the awards being given. I mentioned earlier that we've seen Shield Award nomination growth slow this year. And we feel okay with that because we'd much rather see more thought and meaning put into our awards than people really just blowing through their budget without much thought or effort to it. And finally, we know that the best way we can capture employee attention is by being face-to-face. So we're taking our recognition on the road this year. We're conducting a series of roadshows to educate employees on the program, the platform, and recognition best practice. We want to meet employees where they're at in their recognition journey and arm them with the information, tools, and tips that ultimately will help us continue to build our collective culture of appreciation at US Bank. It's an exciting time for us, and we're really looking forward to getting in front of employees and hearing what they have to say about recognition at US Bank.
So CenterPoint Energy is a old utility, 115 years old plus, something like that. Anyway, we're an electric and gas utility plus an energy gas pipeline and a natural gas marketing company with about 9,000 employees. And we are the result of several mergers and acquisitions and a few divestitures along the way. That means that our culture is not just one culture. It's a composite of many different cultures, all the way from people in Houston that run electric utility and all the way to Minnesota with the gas utility and gas distribution, or pipelines all across the country and that sort of thing. But the real issue, I think, about the challenge we faced was around management. We have a transition going on right now. In fact, next year, our top 4 leaders will all be turning 65, and they have all announced that they're going to retire. So we have been very busy on succession planning, as you can imagine, over the last couple of years. And so that whole boomer group of management that we have running the company today is going to be transitioning out over the next few years. We have a very serious aging workforce problem in the company, and about 55% of our employees will be able to retire within the next 5 years. So it's quite a transition we'll be facing, and we call it a workforce transformation going on. So we're having to do a lot of things to ensure that we keep people as long as we can. So we put in a lot of things around like phased retirement and things like that to keep people here longer. And we put in knowledge transfer programs to try to keep them transferring knowledge to people who will succeed them. And then we also put in work-life balance programs and rewards and recognition to try to really engage our employees. We have very low turnover, less than 5%, and we have had that for years and years. And we have a very engaged culture in general. So people often say when we do these engagement surveys that they're going to retire from CenterPoint. That's what their plan is. So we have a really good, solid group of employees. What we had the problem with was our management team was not bought in at all on rewards and recognition. Today's environment is different. We have got to reward and recognize our people. They need it, they deserve it, and we've got to change our culture. So we went about sort of digging out. When we first, this wasn't a top-down driven thing. This was a bottom-up thing. If you call HR the bottom, which sometimes it feels like that, as all of you know. And so when we did studies on how many people got tips across the company, we saw a lot of variation. Some organizations were giving way too many, and for very little good reason. And some people were giving none, or very small numbers. Like the electric division was that culture just didn't have that sort of reward recognition aspect to it. It was very unionized as well. So between union and management, there was very little of patting on the back between the two of them. So the other thing we had a problem with was we had spot cash gift awards and gift certificates like in people's drawers out in the fields. It's like a secretary would have, I want to give somebody a card that you would reach in her drawer, pull out a $100 gift card, and no auditable track and no reporting, no stuff like that. So we had a big audit across the company. We found all this stuff going on that was just, not trackable. It was just very out of control. And so we finally went to the CEO and said, we have an audit here, and this audit says that we are wasting money, we don't have good controls, and so the auditors are saying we need to get control of this. And so I used that as sort of my, my push to him to say we really have to do something. And I just happened to have something, David, that I think might work. I went to this client conference in Vancouver or someplace, and I said, this OC Tanner group that we use to do our service awards, they actually have a pretty good rewards and recognition process that I think might fit our culture and might help us to get all these pieces together. And lo and behold, he said, sure, why don't we try that? So I started building a coalition of not only my own staff, but some of the business unit presidents who would come up to the ranks and some others we had brought in, and started building a coalition of stakeholders who kind of a little bit X generation kind of thinking. And so over the next year or so that it took to do the stakeholder management, we were successful at finally getting a significant group of people underneath the top four, and that were what we call the executive committee, and I got them all on board. And so it boiled down to a final executive committee meeting where I was presenting my next year's budget. And I had already obtained my CEO's approval. I'd already obtained all the business unit approval, my controller's approval. And so I had all these guys sitting in the room, strategically placed, right? So for the other three members of the executive committee starting to ask questions and started to shoot me down. And what I did was I basically went around all them, didn't even include them in the stakeholder management, because I knew what they would say. So I just went around them and said, I'm going to get all these other people to say, we're going to do this. And sure enough, in the meeting, I had support from all those other guys, and everything all the resistance that was brought forward, we were able to knock it down. And so they approved it, and we were able to put in the budget for the initial first year of the program. Now, since then, we have been able to consolidate all the various programs. And the last thing we have to do is the safety award programs. Safety award programs that use gift cards across the entire system is one of the most entrenched groups of people I've ever met. They have ownership of these safety programs that they feel are theirs, and we're going to come in and tell them a new way to do it. So my view of handling that is going to be, you still own your safety program. HR is not coming in here to tell you how to do it better. We're just going to give you a new system that you can track all the data. You can use a much more objective way of doing this, that you can use these new award systems and points and dollars to do a much better job of dealing with rewarding people. Gift cards are not really that good to give out to people because a lot of people don't use them. So we're starting to make inroads in that group, and by the time we get this time next year, I hope to have all my rewards and recognition programs all under the one OC Tanner roof. So, in conclusion, the message I'm sending you is, if you're in a situation where you haven't done this yet, make sure that you don't let some senior executive who just will not appreciate what it really takes to run an organization today. Don't let that stop you. Figure out a way to go around and get it done, because this is the most important thing that I think HR can do today to make sure that our employees are staying focused and engaged. Now, our last engagement survey, we ranked number one or two in the gas utility sector. So we're doing what it takes to engage our employees.
What did we want to accomplish with the program? Well, going back, and I think I've heard this already, there was an audit. A couple of years ago, the internal auditors came in from Germany, and they said, we have too many different programs throughout the different businesses. There's no way of tracking them. We're spending money on things we don't know. So we need to do a better job here. Let's try to harmonize. So what we did was we developed a team where we brought on representatives from the different businesses, because we knew that was important, to bring people on from the different businesses so we can get buy-in as well. And we also brought on people from IT, accounting, and procurement. So that was important. We then did an RFP where we looked at 9 different vendors, and the decision was to partner with OC Tanner. Really, very great partnership, I would say. And then we went out to implement this new approach called points program. But as the team got together and we started talking about, okay, let's look at this from an administrative perspective because we just want to harmonize the program, we realized there was more to the program that we wanted to accomplish. And I heard it earlier this morning when Dave was talking about how long companies have been around and how do we keep those companies growing, looking at in employee interaction and innovation. And that's exactly what we wanted to do. When Bayer hired our new CEO a few years ago, he put that challenge out there to innovate, come up with more innovations for the company and get employees engaged. And so this was the opportunity when we came together as a team to look at that. So when we said, okay, we have the administrative stuff we want to do, but let's now focus on these other areas as well with this program. Let's get a program to drive innovation, to drive employee engagement. And also, one of the other things about Bayer was to change the culture to a positive feedback environment. What I mean by that, Bayer's culture before was always, what did you do wrong? And so that was the discussion. That was always that communication between managers and employees. What did you do wrong? And that was always the focus. And we said, you know what, that's a different culture we want to get away from. And we thought this was a way to celebrate. So let's look at this from a positive perspective. What did you do right? And let's celebrate those things and also bring fun back to the process. Because the way recognition was before was a manager would bring an employee into their office, tell them they got something, which again, the programs weren't used that well, and that was it. And there was no celebration, nobody knew that they received an award. And here we said, we want a program that we can go out and get managers involved and celebrate the events. So what we put together was some team objectives, and just spoke to some of these already. Changing the culture, coming up with a brand that would be across the U.S., right? And that would be our new brand. And then, of course, some system administration as well. Obviously, better tracking, looking at costs, reporting, something we didn't know before. So definitely some system administration things that OC Tanner brought to the table for us that we didn't have. But the big issues were, or the big things were around what I talked about before, changing the culture, driving innovation, and employee engagement. What was changing that we went out there talking to employees and managers? Well, again, changing that culture to that more positive feedback. Recognition as more of an interaction, not a transaction. What do I mean by that? So again, with the old programs, which were cash-based, it was more of that transaction. The manager pulls the employee into their office and says, here's $100 or here's $1,000, and that's really it. And so we wanted that to be more of an interaction, a fun event, right? And so getting rid of the cash as the focus. Although you'll see later that cash is part of the program, but at a higher level. Again, we wanted to align it with Bayer's life values, because it's really important. Life is a global initiative that was launched throughout the company for these values, so we wanted to link back to those values. We also wanted a program that was now consistent across all of our businesses, because the other programs were not. And then, again, having more of a centralized budgets by our business units. So the positives that came out of this as we went through and rolled this out and talked to people was we had one package, one platform that covered these 4 different programs. Again, more focus on the appropriate recognition. Providing that consistent recognition around awards, which was lacking before. Now we'll have consistency. And I'll explain how did we get to that consistency later as well. Variety in the award options, and then nominating for people to receive awards. We opened that up to every employee. So any employee can go in and nominate someone else, which we didn't have before. It was always left up to a manager of that employee. So now the nomination process opened up wider, as well as being able to cross over the businesses, which we could not do before. And we have so many teams that cross over our different businesses, so that was important for us. Our program actually is only a year old. Last week it was a year. We rolled it out last year, 1 week ago. The consistency, what we worked with OC Tanner on was creating this nomination wizard where we created some questions that when somebody's going to nominate someone, they would answer these questions around the business, the culture, as well as our life values, and then that would, based on those responses, those answers, would come up with what the right level of award would be. So we were now able to bring consistency across for the awards because that was lacking before. And then the budget process. So in the past, every cost center had a budget for recognition, or lack thereof, really. And so in some cases, managers didn't want to use their budget, so they wouldn't give recognition. That was a problem. So what we did was we created these budget pools at the business unit level. So, and then we would just monitor and track those. So that did not become an issue anymore for us. We also, using the points program, we wanted the ability for employees to have an account where they can then accumulate these points. And so what we did was we had the points expire after 3 years. So the points have a 3-year life where they can get these points for all different things and then build that up to then go to the catalog and be able to get either merchandise, gift cards, and we also, as I mentioned before, included cash, but at a higher level. And this just shows you, again, this went over really well for us with the employees. They liked the idea of being able to go in to the catalog and look for, sort on things and look for different merchandise. So that really worked well for us. And then, again, this just shows you how they can look at the different product. One of the big things for us, again, when we said, well, how do we celebrate? How do we bring fun back? We worked with O.C. Tanner's marketing group and communications group on creating these award certificates. Some additional information as well when rolling out the program. What we thought about was how do we administer this program? So we partnered with O.C. Tanner on the administration side, this solution management approach. And this has been great. They help us not only run reports and to look at things, but really what they bring to the table, in my opinion, is they look at the program and how are we utilizing that program? And they have certain surveys that people can participate in, and so they track that information. And we'll be looking at, now that we've hit a year, we'll be looking at that later this year to see how did we do in some of these surveys and how is the program working, how can we make it better. So that's really good about this program from my perspective, is working with them and how they can look at this program and help make it better. Communications, this was critical for us. We're now rolling out a new program. We're taking away the old programs, and which is cash-based, and we're going to roll out a new program. So we did partner with our communications folks to do this. And so what we did was we first created some teasers. And so about a month before the program went live, we sent these teasers out as emails to all employees, as well as putting them on our intranet sites. And just kind of giving some, again, teasing about some new program coming, tying to life values, and recognizing people. We also worked with O.C. Tanner on what we call a rally cry video. And so one of Bader's big taglines is science for a better life. And that's kind of how we linked our better because of you. That whole better in both those words. The day the program launched, we had these videos playing, this video playing in all of our different buildings, as well as on the intranet sites too. Then we also had posters and different other display material announcing the program. We also created t-shirts with the name, and then on the day of the launch, HR and communications people, the champions of the program, all wore t-shirts announcing the program. And so you're in an office and you're walking around with a t-shirt that has a program, so employees are coming up to you and asking you about it. And it was a good way to get people involved and explaining to them the program. And then what we're looking at is some sustained communications. Because again, you just can't communicate once, because then it will go away. And so we're still working with our communications team to try to keep this going. One thing that we are looking to do is create this champion group. We've had some initial discussions. We really haven't got it up yet and running, but we have had some initial discussions, and that's one area that we want to go where we can have this storytelling about what people have accomplished as well. So the other thing that we realized is with this program is we're trying to change the culture. And so we needed to create a training program, not just on how to use the tool. We did that, and that was linked to the tool itself, but really around the philosophy around recognition. Why should you use recognition? When should you use these recognition. How, what, all of that information. So we worked, our training group partnered with O.C. Tanner's training department, and we created this training program online, and it's an interactive training program. It's a little over an hour long. We've also brought in O.C. Tanner to do some classroom training as well at different venues. But very important, we felt, to try to change the culture to create this training. And so some of the training, again, we also put together working to do a webinar right before the launch of the program, where we had managers and HR call in to find out about the program and understand it a little bit better. We also worked with O.C. Tanner to come on and do some site demo trainings at different locations for us, and that's gone over well. Actually, we also had them, our farmer organization, our sales and marketing, they were having a conference, so we brought O.C. Tanner down to that conference where they set up a booth. Went over really well with our sales and marketing organization. So again, this is just some information we had. I would say as you go down this path, you might want to also have this information too. It really worked out well with our employees, especially as we're trying to change the culture and trying to move them away from a cash-based program. And then just some quick lessons learned that we learned. One thing before the launch, even though we did conduct some training for HR, I think we should have done more of that. And so I would just say, definitely do more training for HR, because at the end of the day, employees are going to go to HR, and when we launch the program, they were coming to HR, and so it's just always good to have them ready and be much more knowledgeable. Additional selling to the executive bodies or making them as champions. We did obviously go to our executive body and get approval for the program. Our president was involved in the launch of the program as well. But what I mean here is some of the heads of our different businesses, maybe we could have done a little bit more with them getting involved too. Although they do utilize the program. Just working more with the canned reports, very helpful. From our perspective, make sure the businesses know to use a more realistic reward budget. Some of our businesses did not listen to us on that, and so we're trying to work with them to use more of a realistic budget there. And then the one thing I will say, because we heard some people, some people start panicking, especially sometimes HR, and being in HR, I know that, they hear a few people complaining, and all of a sudden, oh my God, the world is ending, it's not working right. And we rolled this program out to over 12,000 employees. And yet when we looked at the number of complaints, it was less than 1% of that. So, and the complaints were around, well, how, the sign-in process or things of that sort. So really, again, when you roll it out, you're never going to get 100% buy-in on anything you do, but take that into account.
Well, in October 2011, we were about 4,500 employees until October of 2011 when we merged with Auto Club South. Auto Club South is that southeastern part of the map. If you remember the map, they operated in Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. And no, I haven't been able to weasel a trip to Puerto Rico or the Virgin Islands yet. But we merged with them in October of 2011, and they brought to the table 4,000 employees. So we were told this was going to be a merger of equals. Anybody who wants to spend some time tonight at dinner over drinks talking about mergers of equals, I'd be happy to tell you what those are like. Any of you who have survived a merger of equals knows what I'm talking about. We're still merging those equals. It does add a bit of stress to the deal, but our employees are long tenured. As you can see, on average, our tenure is 10.9 years compared to an average of 4.4 years. Very community oriented, as you would imagine, with AAA. A lot of community activity, charitable organizations that we're actively involved in. And we've got employees who operate in a lot of different modes. They're customer facing in branches. We have large numbers in call centers. We have your support staff in headquarters buildings, right down to our fleet drivers who are out there repairing your cars on the side of the road. This is just a brief timeline showing the ACG-OC Tanner relationship. And Dave, I want to point out that we're celebrating 25 years. This is our silver anniversary. I guess I didn't realize when we put together this slide, this is a milestone anniversary with OC Tanner. We began in 1988, as most companies do, I believe, with OC Tanner, and that's in the service award area. We brought in performance the performance recognition in 2005. And what's interesting is we brought it in for the same reason that I'm hearing up here on the panel, and my guess is with a lot of you out there, is we were out of control. We were literally out of control with recognition. The money that was being spent, it took us probably 6 months to even get our arms around where the money was being spent, what GL account this money was being run through. We had people that were taking people, as I heard before, on trips, spending thousands of dollars in some areas got nothing. So this was our way of getting things under control. In 2005, we implemented our first performance program. In 2008, we did a program refresh on that. 2010, MEMIC joined our organization. 2011 was our Powered by You launch, and that's when we'll spend a bit of time this afternoon talking about that launch. 2012, Fremont Insurance joined us, and in 2013, we actually added the Auto Club South folks to our Powered by You recognition site on January 1st, and that in and of itself brought some stress to the organization. I'll talk about that in a minute. We also took that opportunity to add 1 and 3 year service awards to our program. Our service award program had started at 5 prior to that. We were actually able to generate some savings because the Auto Club South service award program was extremely rich. So we were able to get that consistent across the footprint, and we were able to add 1 and 3 year awards at basically no additional cost to the organization. So Powered by You, this is our recognition program, our portal. It's a points-based performance recognition program. It was launched on August 1st of 2011, and then as I said, we launched it in Auto Club South in our southern region footprint, as we refer to them as, on January 1st. Prior to Powered by You launch, we used redemption codes. And we use redemption codes at the levels that are on the screen here. But our call center leaders have been saying all along, we want a points-based system that will allow us to do more frequent recognition. It can save up their points for larger gifts. So that was one of the main reasons. It gave that flexibility for employees, greater reward selection, because now they can save for that larger reward. And it provided an incentive to them by building a bank of points as you're saving for that. It's that incentive to get more recognition. A little bit around the financials with this. We provide at a corporate level $125 per employee annually for our above and beyond for the performance recognition. So you do the math, about 8,200 employees. It's a little over $1 million that we budget. I will tell you, our old program that was tired and not used a whole lot, we never had to worry about getting to that budget amount. We have to actually, for the first time this year, start giving some consideration to looking at that budget because they're spending it. It's been very popular. We also, as many of the speakers have talked about, have the non-monetary recognition, the employee-to-employee recognition. That's the e-buttons and cards. And now the monetary recognition, you can see we tweaked the award levels a little bit. We added what we call a high five. It's a $5 award. The call center said we really want this. Again, $25 is the smallest award. They said, can you do something a little smaller so we can do even more frequent recognition? So we added the high five. And again, we've also pushed all of the incentive and sales awards programs. So our sales areas that have different contests, things of that nature, all of those contests flow through this system as well. And then we've had some departments that have developed their own contests, not sales related, but just their own contests around driving improved quality service scores, net promoter scores, things of that nature, and they also use the Powered by You system to recognize their employees for that. So what are our challenges? Again, we want to get the word out, keep the program top of mind. That's actually what most of my presentation is going to be about, is the communication aspect and marketing. How about the monetary? How are we doing on the monetary side? The monetary side, we're doing extremely well. I'm very proud of these results. You can see from a utilization standpoint, we have consistently been above the OC Tanner best practice line. Similar little bit of a drop-off in 2013, but even with that drop-off, significantly above the utilization award for OC Tanner. And the same on the reach, above on the reach. I will add, there's a real good reason for why we have such high utilization and reach numbers. All recognition goes through Powered by You. We stopped all of that other recognition that was going on in the organization. And how did we do that? We partnered with our finance department, again, for the same reason that we heard in a lot of other areas. It wasn't controlled. We didn't have proper tax treatment. It just needed to be handled correctly, and using the site is the correct way. And that's actually been embedded within our corporate policies. It's within our T&E policy. It's within our disbursements policy. We feel as if the site is very intuitive, it's easy to access, it's easy to use, and we have provided a lot of resources to our managers and our employees for help and guidance. And again, what I believe is one of the most important features is, and I think you've heard it from the other presenters, is communication is critical. So what does that communication look like? We've kind of lumped this into 5 different areas, and I will say all of these communications, we use that branding on the communications. We have launch communications, we have ongoing resources for help and guidance, we have ongoing communications whenever the system changes or system improvements are made. We have an annual recognition event, we have a recognition week, which I'll talk to you about in a minute, and we profile employees who receive awards on our corporate intranet page. So at system launch, like I think, again, we heard from a lot of the presenters, we teased it out, we sent out communications where we gave people a glimpse of what that virtual bulletin board, the cork board was going to look like, showed them gave them a little peek at what the buttons and cards were going to look like, showed them the canvas that was going to be part of the system itself. On launch day, I love this idea, we partnered with OC Tanner and we sent out to every employee in the organization a Powered by You branded button. So their first button that they received on the first day of launch, and it was a Powered by You button, which they got the email saying you've been recognized, so now the employees, it forced them, they wanted to go into the system and see their button. So when they go in there, they see that virtual cork board that they can customize with their mascot and their name and everything else. So now you've got those employees engaged on day one, and it was by something as simple as sending them that Powered by You button. We tailored pre-system launch communications to managers and employees. The managers, we focused on, look at the cool tools you're finally going to get as far as being able to track what recognition is going on in your area, the toolbox concept, the idea you can look in and see how are your managers recognizing, who are the top recognizers in your organization. For the employee standpoint, we focused on that virtual cork board, the electronic bulletin board, the fact that you're going to be able to now recognize your coworkers, that employee-to-employee recognition through the e-cards and e-buttons. Again, at system launch, we made this available on our corporate intranet. I mentioned before how we've added this button. You can see on the bottom left there is our home page for our corporate intranet, and we actually have that button on the bottom left that is there constantly, which people can click on, and it brings you to the Powered by You resource page, where we have put any resource anybody would ever need or want, frequently asked questions, resource guides, job aids, links to training, as well as a link to the site itself right there. Some more resources. Again, at launch, we provided a 2-page printable PDF on the system to all employees. We did a manager's guide. The managers could look through and had every resource a manager would need to utilize the new system. And we have continued to send out more communications and more resources as the system has changed or as things have come up and we've identified a need for them. So ongoing, what are we doing with regard to communication? Each quarter, we list on our corporate intranet homepage, we have a link to all the employees who have received our highest, our gold and silver awards in the last quarter. Each month, we list every employee who's celebrating a milestone service anniversary. We add intranet stories whenever we launch new features, or there's new buttons or new e-cards that are launched. We put feature stories out on our corporate intranet. We also do feature stories on any of our employees who have been recognized for above and beyond. This is kind of humorous because we typically will get, I head up the employee communications area which runs this system. And we will get communications from managers periodically who will say, I'd really like you to do a feature story on John or Mary because of whatever. And my communications person who handles most of this, her first question is always, did you recognize them and Powered by You? We're getting better, but a lot of times in the beginning they say, no. And we say, well, we think first you need to recognize these folks using the recognition system. And then we use that tie-in in the feature story. We're more than happy to talk about it, but then we always use that tie-in back to they were recognized through the Powered by You system. And then down the bottom left there, we see that we also do feature stories on our milestone employees. We reach out to employees who are celebrating milestone anniversaries, and we do feature stories on them as well. And then we do recognition week. Every April, we take 1 week, and we focus solely on recognition. It starts with a message from my boss, the Senior Vice President of Human Resources, sends out a message about reiterating the importance of recognition. And then we do profile stories all that week on employees who have really done something phenomenal over the course of the past year and want to tell their story. It also coincides with our Ambassador of the Year, our Volunteer of the Year time frame, so we do a story on the Volunteers of the Year. And then we also, last year, we also promoted the use of the e-thanks area, so we found that those employees or managers who were very high users of e-thanks, we did a feature story on them and let them talk about the impact of e-thanks on their business line. Recognition for e-thanks, e-cards, and e-buttons, and the spike that you see is recognition week. When you put that out in front of your employees and you remind them of the system and the importance of it, it drives results. The key is now to keep that bar going up even after recognition week occurs, and that's kind of our ongoing communications. The last couple slides, I just want to talk a bit about our redemption rate because that's something else that we're pretty proud of. It's much higher than the OC Tanner average. We're at 71%. Part of the reason is our points were set to expire 2 years. I've heard some of my fellow presenters say theirs are 3. We set ours up at 2 years. So we were coming up this year in August of 2013 on that 2 years. So we were doing a lot of communications to folks, reminding them if they hadn't used their points to get out there and use it. We do a lot, as I've already shown you, a lot of communications around. You've got your points out there, make sure you use them. I think it's also a good representation of the value or the quality of the items that are in OC Tanner's catalog. We get a lot of wonderful feedback as far as really up-to-date current electronics. I mean, people like the gifts that are out there and they want to redeem their points. And again, as I said before, we push everything through this, including sales contests, so that's another reason why we see very high utilization.
This is a question for Dean. For your appreciation program, does it go to employees? A lot of people have talked about e-buttons, e-cards. We have a large population that are not online, they don't have email, a large production workforce, non-unionized, that we probably want to be looking at to include. So do you have a population like that? And so are they included in the program, and how do you address that?
Yes, the entire population is included in the program. We do have about a third of our employees are unionized, and there was quite a bit of angst around including them. And I had to remind our management team that they were already included in the performance improvement or performance incentive plan, so they were already getting PIP awards. And so we just simply explained to them that this was a better way to do what they were doing before, and that they do need to include all employees into this program because it's important that all, regardless of what they do, whether they're in a union or not, that they be rewarded and recognized for what they do. And our electric utility workers, for example, are out there doing incredible things, and they do need to be recognized. So obviously they don't have computers at their desk, or they don't have a desk, so they're in trucks. But they are included, and we just have to use a lot more creativity to get them involved. But they do receive awards just a lot less frequent.
Hi, to get people really excited about a program like this, did any of you have to look at maybe their performance goals for the year, tie in sort of a challenge to maybe more of the leadership level to get them, to own this a bit more, so building to their goals?
I can speak for ACG. We did not actually require it to be tied into their goals, but the mere fact that they now managers had access to that toolbox and had access and visibility into recognition, which they had never had before, that alone has brought the visibility forward. So now what we're hearing is managers are sitting in their staff meeting with their managers, and that is the topic of conversation there. I mean, they're saying, well, boy, Mary, you're doing a great job. John, you're doing no recognition. Mary, why don't you talk about some examples of what you're doing to recognize it? Because John, I've got a concern that, why aren't you doing any of that? So it's kind of become a bit, it's self-policing, it's self-correcting, but we haven't had to actually delegate it or require it.
And for us, the same thing. We did not require any metrics either, although with the toolbox, it does come up. We hear it in the meetings, and they talk about it. So
Guilt's a great motivator.
Yeah, we didn't put it in our incentive program either. I mean, managers were just sort of competing with each other as to how well they participate in the program. So if we provide reports, we're able to, raise the guilt level. Shame.
At US Bank, we don't have goals yet, but we're moving in that direction. As we've started to really dissect the data and look at utilization and reach based on managers versus employees, we do see some gaps. We really want this to be a top-down approach, and we don't have that consistently. So right now, we're trying to find some creative ways. Like I said, if you measure something and you report on it, it's a powerful motivator in our organization, so we're trying to make that more visible. Until from an HR perspective, we have goals established.
This is a question for Stephanie. Is that you talked about being in 30 different countries. Do you have different e-buttons and e-cards for different countries, or does everybody see the same thing?
We do have country-specific designs in the online system. And someone was asking about our offline appreciation station, and we didn't go through quite the rigorous review of those designs, but we have a lot of US Bank branded. But we do try to make sure they're either culturally agnostic or culturally relevant in what they see.
Stephanie, I have a question for you. You had brought up the concept of the roadshow, and we worked with a few other companies who have also adopted that concept and had great success. Is that new within US Bank, or did you attach that to other topics that were already part of the roadshows that you were having? And how many stops are there around the world?
So this will be the first time that we do a roadshow for recognition specifically. And I'm actually unique. I don't actually report into HR. I sit in our payments line of business, and payments again is think about personal credit cards or corporate cards, merchant processing. And our leader of the payments division, she's unique in our company. At the end of every year, she does a personal roadshow throughout payment services and takes the time to get in front of employees. And she does that in a minimum of at least 11 cities, including some of our foreign countries. So the recognition roadshow, this is new for us. It will actually be recognition only. And our intent where we will start is in our operation and call centers where we have the largest amounts of employees. So it's something new. We don't have other lines of business that do it. So we're interested, just from the participation we've had in meetings and events, and the interest it's generated, we feel this is a great way to capture people's attention, spend a little bit of quality time with them, and have some fun. And the environment of call centers and operation centers is perfect for that.
I wanted to actually ask you, Bill, if you could expand on your Appreciation Week. So with the spirit of roadshows starting to become sort of the best practice with a lot of clients we work with, Appreciation Week is as well. We've seen it for many years with Hospital Week with the healthcare organizations we work with. But how long have you been doing that? And who does the planning and execution for that week?
We started actually at the end of 2011 with, right after we brought in Powered by You, and it's actually run out of our employee communications area. And we go through and review all of those gold and silver awards, looking for kind of those great stories that we want to share with our employees. And we basically just work with those employees and their leaders to set up interviews, talk with them, get information from them, and then write these feature stories that appear on the homepage of the corporate intranet. But we dedicate one full week where that's all we focus on. And I don't know if you noticed on our corporate intranet, we have space for 2 feature stories on that homepage, and that's all we rotate through every day that week are just stories tied to recognition.
This is a question for any of the panelists. If you have a global population and offer this program, do you find that people outside the U.S. value this type of program?
So I'll take that. I would say yes, they do value it, but there's the approach is often varied. It isn't the same way that necessarily our employees embrace it in the United States. We have had slow adoption with the online system, and Poland is one example, and we decided that was the first European location that we introduced appreciation stations, and that has been a huge hit. So kind of that offline or that personal interaction seems to be culturally more relevant to them than the online system. So it does vary, and you do need to tailor your approach according to cultural preferences, I would say.
My question's around the non-online opportunity for things. So you talked about your appreciation kit. How do you go about actually getting those out to leaders like what are the logistics that you go about to get those out with a company the size of US Bank, 65,000 employees? You have a lot of leaders to get that out to.
Yeah, so we initially started handing them out at conferences. We had, when people registered for their meeting, they got a certificate, they'd have to come see us in order to get them. And then we actually put them online where employees or managers go to order office supplies or other US Bank branded materials. We have them out there. We've got the kits, and now we've got refillers for the kits as well. That's worked really well.